I literally have no idea why I want to do this video, except we were just playing the Jagged Little Pill soundtrack in the kitchen while we were cleaning up, and I can't stop thinking about this fucking musical. So Jagged Little Pill is a 2019 jukebox musical about a family that is seemingly perfect on the outside. You know, you have your stay-at-home mother, your working father, the golden boy older brother, and then there is the rebellious child. I actually don't remember the names of any of the characters. This daughter character is named Frankie. She is in this musical to sing the song Unprodigal Daughter. When you're creating a jukebox musical, you obviously have to put a lot of thought into how to use certain songs. You're not coming up with a plot for a musical organically, you're coming up with a plot for a musical from an album or from a set of songs. And when Alanis Morissette was designing this musical, you can definitely tell that the plot came from the songs. But that's true of all jukebox musicals, and I frankly think that we should be able to keep that in mind when we're analyzing the plot, that sometimes plot points were definitely put in to fit the songs. You know, I understand that. I really understand the need to do that, and I definitely understand the need to get the song You Oughta Know into your jukebox musical based on Alanis Morissette. However, the way they did that kind of makes me want to die. I think frankly the first thing to know about Jagged Little Pill is that it is a musical that literally wants to tackle every single social issue that currently exists. It does that with varying quality. So as you go into the musical, you discover via a very, very well done song that the mother actually has an opioid addiction due to beginning to take painkillers for an injury a little while ago. You find out that the dad is really unhappy in his marriage to his wife and sometimes feels like she really doesn't want him. Both of these conflicts handled surprisingly well. That will be said less. We also have the brother, who is the perfect golden boy, and as you go through the musical, you find out that he really does not love his life as a golden boy all the time. He feels like he has to be perfect. He feels like he can never let his guard down. I think this storyline is done fine. The way that the show really chooses to handle his golden boy-ness is via putting him into another storyline that he doesn't really necessarily belong in, but they do some interesting things with it, so let's move on to that. I think that is the biggest storyline in this show. There is a side character who is good friends with the golden boy character. What the fuck is his name? Okay, his name is Steve. Wait, is it? No, his name is literally Nick. I just didn't remember. He's played by Derek Klena. So this side character, Bella, is sexually assaulted at a party that Nick is at, and by one of Nick's closest friends, and he witnesses sort of the beginning of it and then doesn't really know how to react, doesn't really want to register what's happening, and then obviously knows he could have stopped it and has a testimonial that can prove that Bella was in fact sexually assaulted, and he's grappling with whether to come forward from that. The show actually does a pretty good job with this. I hesitate to criticize some things about the rape storyline because I think that given that it's literally a jukebox musical, I think they handle this subject really, really respectfully. Alanis Morissette wrote 2 new songs for the show, and one of them is called Predator, and it is excellent. I think it's one of the best songs in the show, and Bella sings it, and it's about what happens with her. That section all feels really emotionally real. The other thing that comes up with this rape storyline is that we discover that Mary Jane, the mother character, was actually also sexually assaulted, and that's the cause of some of her relationship troubles because they've come back after the trauma of her car accident. This is also handled with way more respect than I would have thought possible. So yeah, all of those storylines, they're there. And there are a lot, and I think sometimes storylines get stacked up on top of each other in a way that means time in the musical kind of feels all over the place. The tone of the musical is actually all over the place. Genuinely, I never felt like I understood what this musical was going for. There are some numbers that are like really cute and really sweet, and then there are some numbers that are like, oh yeah, teenage angst. And then there are some numbers that are just so sad and so upsetting, and it switches back and forth between those tones really, really quickly, and sometimes with less grace than I would have liked. This isn't helped by the fact that the dialogue is not good. All of the teen characters don't have good dialogue. Mostly it just feels very surface level with all of these characters. And that brings me to the last character who is a main character, and how everything that was done with her makes me want to die. So Frankie is a transracial adoptee. She is black and her family is white.
Why are you so petrified of silence? Here, can you handle it?
She also is bisexual, and she has a girlfriend as the show begins. Her name is Jo. Her mother is homophobic. That's pretty much all we get on Jo. She is played by one of the original middle Allisons from Broadway's Fun Home. So that was cool. The best thing about Frankie as a character is that Celia Gooding can sing so insanely well. She is a really, really good singer and a pretty good actress. The problem is that what she has to work with is bad. So the main thing with this storyline is that they try to set up in the very first number, in All I Really Want, which is an excellent number, that Frankie feels like her family doesn't really get her and doesn't really want her, and is also kind of doesn't want her loudness, and that she doesn't really fit what they want out of a daughter. This is set up extremely well, but it doesn't get paid off. We really don't get a lot of context for that. We don't really get a lot of insight into what the relationship between the two is. We have occasional moments where the parents feel like really ignorant, and then occasional moments where they feel insanely respectful. And I feel like it goes back and forth so much that I really didn't get a grasp on either her feelings or on either of her parents' feelings. Not even necessarily her feelings. I think just how real her feelings about her parents being irrational are. And I don't mean that as like her parents are actually wonderful and she's being ungrateful. I don't mean that at all. It's that the only time we actually see a conflict between her and her parents, they're in the right, and she runs away from home over it, which really makes her seem less sympathetic. And we should also explain why they were right to be upset. And this is the thing about this show that just, oh my god, I just hate it. I hate it so much. So as we've mentioned, Frankie's bisexual, and she has a girlfriend, Jo. But in the fourth number of the show, ironic, she starts flirting with a guy.
It's like meeting the boy of my dreams, and then
I'm not seeing anyone.
She starts flirting with a guy. The first time I saw this musical, I didn't know anything about the plot. I went in very blind. So when I saw that she was bisexual and had a girlfriend, I was like, oh yeah, that's really fun. And then I got to this number and I was like, oh my god, they're not setting up a romance between her and this guy. She is in a committed relationship. They wouldn't have their only bisexual character cheat. Because, you know, that is the only representation that anyone seems to be able to come up with for bi characters ever. But they're not gonna do that. It's 2019. This can't happen. Oh my god, I had so much to learn. I had so much to learn about the depths to which this shit goes.
does anyone else have feedback on that?
You guys should do it!
So Frankie starts flirting with this guy, Phoenix. Actually asks him out, implies that he's her soulmate in the first number that she sings with him, which is a lot, but I get it. It's a lyric. And then it just starts going further. More specifically, she doesn't tell him that she has a girlfriend, and also doesn't tell her girlfriend that she's hanging out with this guy. Definitely knows that her girlfriend wouldn't be like insanely happy about the fact that they're clearly flirting. By the way, her girlfriend is still closeted this entire time, like still deeply closeted. She is also closeted, but her parents are okay with it when she comes out to them. That's not to say that she has to come out, but it's just different situations for her and her girlfriend. Her girlfriend would be in actual danger if she came out. So in the second number of Act 2, Frankie, who is still in a relationship with Jo, has sex with Phoenix, who she's known at this point for 2 weeks, and then Jo walks in and sees them having sex. So then Joe walks out into the yard and tells Frankie's parents that Frankie is having sex in her bed with a guy. She's still 15, by the way. She's still 15 for all of this. So obviously her parents walk upstairs and find him in her bed, and he runs off, also discovers that she has a girlfriend. Great realization for your first time having sex with someone. And then runs off. He runs through the theater, like with his pants falling down. It was absurdly funny had I not been wanting to die. She then proceeds to come out to her parents. Her parents have absolutely no reaction. And then her parents are like, well, maybe you shouldn't have sex in your bed because you're 15. And she's like, no, no one fucking understands me. And then runs away from home.
My parents won't stop calling me. What? I just ran away from home.
Like, I wish I could exaggerate this. They're not even that bad about it. She just had sex and she's 15 and they walked in on her. Like, what? Do you expect them to be like, oh yeah, vibes? So she runs away from home to the sounds of Unprodigal Daughter. Again, this is only the second conflict we have seen between her and her parents. Then she calls Phoenix from the train station, tells him that she loves him.
Is she like your girlfriend?
I don't want to talk about that. I love you.
He doesn't say it back because it's been 2 weeks. And also, he just found out that she was in a relationship the entire time. So, like, of course he's not gonna say I love you back. Then she gets really mad about it and is like, oh, well, he only ever wanted me for my body. And then hangs up the phone and then calls Joe. And then Joe gets there and Frankie is like, oh yeah, thank you for coming. I am so mad at my parents right now. And Joe is here like, what the fuck? And like, I get that Frankie is also 15 and is gonna have trouble really understanding how much of a big deal that is, but the fact that she literally does not apologize when she sees Joe again a day later, when Joe just drove all the way out to New York for her, literally drove out to the city to pick her up and rescue her because she's so stupid. I just want to emphasize that like this entire time Frankie shows no guilt or remorse for any of this. And this is what really bothers me about the show. Like it's so much. It's so much. Like she's 15. I get it. 15-year-olds are stupid, but 15-year-olds aren't that stupid. So then Joe sings You Oughta Know, obviously the second most famous Alanis Morissette song. And that was the only reason they put that entire storyline in. So like, not to say that I can write a musical better than the writers of this musical, but I think this is such an easy thing to fix. Like genuinely, is there a reason for Frankie to not apologize? Why can she simply not apologize? When Joe confronts Frankie about this, Frankie is like, well, I didn't realize we weren't in an open relationship. And that's just, first of all, you're 15. Second of all, an open relationship? She is a closeted lesbian. Who the fuck do you think she's having sex with on the side, ma'am? The show cannot decide whether it wants her to be an irrational teenager or a teenager who genuinely feels out of her depth and out of place and just really wants belonging.
I like to reel it in and spit it out. I'm frustrated by your
Like, that is clearly what they're going for. But then with moments like this, like she's treating people like they do not matter. And I think what I really hate about it is that it's getting praise for having gay characters in it. You know, there's one bi character in this show and they immediately had her cheat on her significant other. Like, oh my god. I cannot emphasize enough how much this has been done before and how much this is so boring. The show also really doesn't have anything to say about transracial adoption. It doesn't really have a lot to say about a lot of the issues that are brought up that are sort of tangential to Frankie's storyline. It doesn't have a lot to say about homophobia.
You don't have to shock people to get attention. When I was in high school, my friends and I wanted to save endangered sea lions, so we made brownies and sold them on the quad. Actually, we made blondies.
Of course, they were blondies. Even your brownies are Caucasian.
I just think it's a really wasted storyline. Like, even if you're willing to say, oh, well, it's not that bad, it's not good. This is a really damaging stereotype of bi women, that bi women aren't faithful, and that bi women will always cheat, and that bi women will always go back to men. And the fact that this was put into this musical with a bunch of 15-year-olds just strikes me as kind of disrespectful. It also feels deeply disrespectful in a show that's also about rape culture. There's something about just the way that the romance between Phoenix, the love interest, and Frankie is done that strikes me as being really disparaging to Joe.
I've never felt this healthy before. I've never wanted something rational.
It's like the show can't really decide who it wants to be sympathetic to. Like, Frankie just does not come off sympathetic through this storyline, and I really think that damages the impact of the whole unprodigal daughter thing, the whole all I really want thing. It really damages the depiction of her as a strong character who knows what she wants and is being disparaged for knowing what she wants. Like, that is such a strong and interesting characterization, and then they throw that away to have her have sex with a guy that she's known for 2 weeks in her bed while she's in a committed relationship. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that storyline in Jagged Little Pill, the musical. The thing is, there are a lot of really good things about this musical. I think the musical arrangements are done really well. Some of the songs just get performed in this amazing way that just really made my ears feel like they were ascending to another plane. When I first heard All I Really Want in the theater, I was so hooked. I thought that this was going to be one of my favorite musicals instantly, and I'm really disappointed that it was not. Predator is great, I've already mentioned that, but the staging of it is amazing. I absolutely loved that number. It made me cry, and it made me cringe, and it had me so invested. Smiling, which is performed by Mary Jane, is done really, really well. Really liked that number. It's very quiet. I also really liked Mary Jane, the song. The arrangement of Ironic is really interesting, and they do this thing where they sort of critique the song's lyrics through a bunch of classmates critiquing her presentation.
And isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Hold up! Wait a second! That's actually not ironic!
It gets a little cringeworthy after a moment, but it's a good idea. Forgiven, which is the Act 1 finale, is genuinely one of the best numbers I've heard on Broadway this year. I think about the ending, the build-up, the panache of it all. That also made me cry in the theater. I think it was just because I was overwhelmed, but it did make me cry. It slaps so hard. And of course, the You Oughta Know arrangement slaps. I think I might like it more than the original song, if only because Lauren Patton is just so hot while doing it. And then we also have Unprodigal Daughter, which is one of the best arrangements in the show, and if I hadn't been wanting to die because it was attached to a storyline that I really didn't like, I probably would have really liked it. So yeah, it's not a bad musical. As a musical, it's really good sometimes, but it just, there's something about it that bugs me so much, and I really just want to know what the writers were thinking when they made some of the choices they made with this show. I think it tries to take on so much that it really loses sight of characterization, and that it really loses sight of the importance of actually making every character feel like a real person. I think characters like Bella and Mary Jane and Frankie all have a lot of really interesting things built into them, and then just the way those characters are done, maybe with the exception of Mary Jane, ends up being kind of disappointing. With Mary Jane, I'm gonna take that back. I think Mary Jane actually gets a pretty balanced storyline. She's a character who, when you first see her, you're like, oh, not really that sympathetic, and then you grow to like her, so that works.
Even after that night, that was my fault.
With Bella, it's mostly just that we don't get enough of her story, and she feels both like a side character and like the most important character in the show, but she doesn't actually get very much stage time. Never thought Nick was interesting, ever, not once. So yeah, those are all of my complicated thoughts on Jagged Little Pill, the musical. I don't know why I'm making this video because it's been a year since that musical came out, but I figured I would simply give my hot take. Also, it was very cathartic to rant about it. Thank you for watching if you got this far, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you and your loved ones are safe and okay as you can be given the circumstances, and I will see you next time. Bye!